Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look then at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what is making the headlines with Rachel Cunliffe and Harry Cole. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight, and a very good evening to both of you. So to the front pages then, let us start with the Metro. Britain on a go slow is the lead for that paper after fuel price protesters targeted several UK motorways with slow-moving convoys. According to the Mail, the Home Secretary has ordered police to crack down on any future such protests. It is also the lead story for the front page of tomorrow's Time. Get tough, they say there. The Financial Times leads with predictions of massive travel disruption from a looming national rail strike, this time involving the biggest rail union, ASLEF, which is balloting its members on action. The Eye reporting on what it calls growing anger within the Cabinet over having to defend Boris Johnson again, this time over his handling of the Chris Pincher assault allegations. The Daily Mirror, meanwhile, leads with the admission that the PM did know about previous allegations against Mr Pincher before he was appointed Deputy Chief Whip. While The Guardian leads with calls from two major unions for Parliament to act to stop what they call the seemingly endless allegations of sexual misconduct by MPs. The Telegraph says the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer is facing a party revolt of his own over his decision not to take the UK back into the EU if he becomes Prime Minister. And The Sun has news of the arrest of an unnamed Premier League footballer over allegations of rape. The Express leading with a promise by Boris Johnson of massive tax cuts for 30 million people to ease the cost of living crisis. And the Star tells us the lengths some smokers are going to find a cheap substitute for tobacco in these financially tough times. Well, quick reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out those front pages while you watch our guests. So let's go back to Harry and to Rachel. Welcome to both of you. A mixed set of front pages, it has to be said, but a number of them, Harry, are going on the story of the last few days, which is what Boris Johnson did or did not know about the man who became his Deputy Chief Whip. Pick us up with the Daily Mirror's front page then. I did know, their headline says.
Yes, so Downing Street's dancing on the head of a pin, if that makes sense, today. On Friday, they were quite bullish. They said, look, the Prime Minister didn't know any specific allegations, despite the fact that Chris Pincher had resigned in October 2017, as Deputy Chief Whip over a scandal, which we all read on the front page of the newspapers. So there's a slightly bizarre line on Friday from our sort of weekly, sort of daily lobby briefing that was overhauled, should we say, to put it to use a euphemism, at this morning's briefing, where the Prime Minister's spokesman, just before the Prime Minister was about to go to the House and clearly wouldn't be able to, had to give an honest and truthful account to the House of Commons on what he knew. That line was changed to actually, well, while he didn't know any outstanding specific complaints, obviously he was aware of, as lots of people in Westminster have, as mainly because it's been written in the newspapers and been across the media, that this man had a bad reputation. They basically said, well, we kind of knew about it, but we thought it was all fine, and we hired him anyway, essentially. So not a great place for the Prime Minister to be. I just think if he'd come out on Thursday and given in to the completely inevitable situation that Chris Pincher was going to have the whip removed, needed to have the whip removed, and that sort of ruthlessness the Prime Minister lacks again and again and again, in the fact he tries to stick to people who've been loyal to him through the years, when anyone from the outside can see they need to be jettisoned, and jettisoned quickly, when they're shown to be a wrong 'un.
Yeah, and this is the problem, isn't it, Rachel, that this overhauling of what is said happens again and again. Don't say if you might need to change your story. And this is exactly what has landed the PM in hot water over his Partygate denials, and has led the Eye to say that Cabinet members are now fed up at having to come out and defend decision-making.
Yeah, you have to feel sorry for some of the cabinet ministers who have put up for the broadcast rounds to defend whatever the latest thing that the government is being criticised for that day, whether it's Partygate, whether it's not instituting a windfall tax on oil companies for the cost of living crisis, whether it's Owen Paterson, whether it's another Pestminster scandal. Whatever it is, they go on the airwaves with a line of what they're meant to say, and sometimes by the time they're off air, the government line has changed. And I think that they're being put in an increasingly difficult position because these are MPs who are having their own reputations and their own credibility and integrity torn to shreds by taking the line that they are told to take, which then turns out not to be the government's line after all. And there have been some truly astounding lines coming out as a result of the Chris Pincher scandal. There was one excuse that Boris Johnson might have known about some of the rumours but couldn't not give him a job based on that because that would have been unfair from an HR perspective because they hadn't been substantiated. There was another one that he had to balance up these allegations of inappropriate conduct with Pincher's skills, which I think is just a blatant insult to all of the very talented and very dedicated Conservative MPs who are not sex pests. And I think Harry's right in that this was inevitable, and the 4-day attempt to brush it under the carpet, well, he's resigned, he's an honourable guy, let's all move on. We all knew where this was going. Although what I didn't see coming was that tonight the Prime Minister's own wife or someone on her team would be briefing against him by saying that she knew, that Carrie Johnson knew of rumours of inappropriate conduct about Chris Pincher back in 2017, and clearly someone on her team has been briefing that tonight. So a bit of an uncomfortable position in Boris Johnson's flat tonight, I imagine.
Yes, that part of the story found out by our political editor, Beth Rigby, in fact. But, there's two issues here. If we look at The Guardian, Harry, one, what does Parliament do about it? And The Guardian's main story is that Parliament must act to stop the seemingly endless allegations of sexual misconduct by MPs. And secondly, what does it say about the judgment of the Prime Minister that despite knowing of some of these allegations, we're still willing to put somebody in post in a role that actually safeguards Conservative MPs as part of their job?
Yeah, I just want to point out, I'd fundamentally disagree with Rachel on one thing, though, in the fact that these cabinet ministers, they aren't children. They aren't, they are sentient beings. They could turn around and say, hang on, no, I'm not going to go on television until I have spoken to the Prime Minister himself and I am comfortable with the answer. There's this ridiculous line that seems to be seeping into our politics of, oh, I haven't seen that. Oh, I'm just the minister that's on the Monday morning round or on the Sunday shows, but no, I haven't read the Sunday papers. I don't know anything in them. And it's frankly insulting, and it's nonsense and it's dishonest. Actually, I think it's for the minister themselves to say, actually, until they're comfortable with the line, until they know that they aren't going to be sort of thrown to the wolves 10 minutes later by a U-turn, they shouldn't be on the television. They shouldn't be talking to the voters. And I think you'd have see Downing Street up its game a significant amount in a very short period of time if a few cabinet ministers and a few ministers and a few MPs actually stood up to them rather than just blindly chasing the whiff of promotion by being slavishly loyal and dogged by going to the airwaves and spouting nonsense. And that's why I think actually scandals like this one taint the entire party, the entire Conservative Party, because everyone has known Chris Pincher has had these allegations swirling around them, some of them even made public on the record by named people, former Conservative candidates. He has been through, as we find out tonight, various complaints procedures, yet actually everyone just pretended everything was fine, when actually it's not fine. And, the amount of, the sort of bar, the level of proof we have to get to in order to publish some of these allegations or broadcast them on the television is extremely high, when actually people have known the reality of them and have frankly covered this up for years.
30 seconds quickly, Rachel, front page of the Daily Express. Do we spot a bit of whatever it's called, diversionary tactics? Is it red meat or something? Tax cuts, a lot of them. Tell us more.
Well, I think it's hoping the voters will have amnesia. So, yes, there are tax cuts or cuts to national insurance coming up just after the government increased national insurance in April, raising the tax burden to its highest level in peacetime. So great that the Daily Express has forgotten about that. But I think quite blatant to try and sell it as a tax cut when you're just redressing an increase in tax from a couple of months previously.
Both of you, stay there. We've got lots more to discuss. Running out of time, I know, already. Rachel, Harry, stand by. We'll have more on the news that Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer is facing a revolt of his own. Back with that in just a moment. Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, Rachel Cunliffe, Deputy Online Editor at the New Statesman, and The Sun's political editor, Harry Cole. Welcome back to both of you. Rachel, talk us through the Daily Telegraph then. Sir Keir Starmer clashing with his own party after his big Brexit announcement today.
Well, he's done a big speech on Labour and Brexit, the details of which, Labour was actually quite secretive about them. Normally you get lots of briefing notes, and I think the reason they were a bit secretive about them was because he hasn't really said all that much. He said that Labour wouldn't seek to rejoin the EU. It wouldn't seek to even have Britain rejoin the single market or the customs union. It would just find a way to make Brexit work, which I think at this stage is something that we would all very much like if Brexit could start working. But it's interesting because people like arch Brexiteer Daniel Hannan have been saying that actually Britain should have stayed in the single market all along, and that our form of Brexit is too hard. So it's interesting to have.
You said.
Sorry?
That's not what Dan Hannan said.
He did. He wrote.
He's always been an advocate. He's always been an advocate for staying in the market.
If I could finish,
He hasn't changed ever.
If I could finish a sentence, I actually edited Dan Hannan write a number of pieces in the run-up to the EU referendum about how one option for the UK would be to stay in the single market and adopt that approach with the EU. So I don't think it's entirely genuine to say that he's never argued on that point, but I'm sure we'll discuss Keir Starmer's position on Brexit a bit later on.
OK, I'm going to cut in just very briefly that the local police, Highland Park chief of police in this Chicago suburb shooting has said they have now identified the person of interest in that shooting. Robert E. Creamer III, we understand. He is 22 years old and local to the area. We'll have the very latest on that. I'm just going to show you the last couple of papers we wanted to talk about, which is Priti Patel. It's the Get Tough message. Is it not, Harry? In the Daily Mail, arrest the protest mob. This is after the go slow. And then the other story you want to talk about is the fact that British Airways is axing flights for up to 105,000 holidaymakers this month. All of that slightly curtailed by our breaking news. But Rachel, Harry, thank you both very much indeed. We'll see you for the top of the 11. Thank you.